It's Mario Lloyd, also known as Real Estate Guru PK, with the Realist Podcast. On the Realist Podcast, we talk about how to make a dollar, how to keep a dollar, and we touch on hot topics. We're launching my Patreon with my whole real estate portfolio, and you're also going to get the podcast before it goes out on all the platforms. You can find me on Instagram at Real Estate Guru PK. You can find me on YouTube at Real Estate Guru PK. And you can find my podcast on Instagram, The Realist Podcast. How y'all doing? Welcome to another episode. We got a special guest.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I met you like, 3-4 days ago?
3-4 days ago, yeah. No, last week.
Last week? Last week? It seemed like that was 3-4 days ago.
Last week.
Absolutely. I met you through Brandon.
Yes, Mr. Boyd.
I was hearing about your story. You was talking about you got a major series coming out.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to talk about that? You want to talk about how you came up in life, or you want to start with that?
We can talk whatever you want. Whatever you want.
We'll start with the series. How's that?
Okay. So I wrote a book. It's called Through These Brown Eyes. It's back there. It's a story of my life. I was a former undercover agent and I married into the cartel. Mm-hmm. So the book is based on my life growing up and then becoming a Fed, doing undercover, and then eventually finding out I got married into the cartel. So I ended up becoming a bestseller after I published the book, and then I sold my story to Hollywood for a featured film and also a limited series. So the featured film is called Veritas, which means the truth. And the series, we're still working on the contractuals of it, but it's going to be kind of like Ozark, a limited series. Kind of like Ozark, yeah.
Who are you in Ozark?
So I would probably be, I'm saying the series is going to be like Ozark, which like a limited series about, cartel activity and how I ended up in the cartel. So, but I mean, obviously my story is going to talk about how I grew up and how I became a Fed, growing up in Chicago and all that. So
you were saying that you talked to 50 Cent about like that you're the real Angela?
Yes.
On Power?
Yes, because I really am. Like, I am the real Angela. And I know Angela's dead now, but we may have to tell Angela's backstory.
Mm-hmm. So how do you identify completely with Angela? Or like,
well, she was a Fed and, in the Power, she was a Fed and she fell in love with a cartel member or like a drug dealer.
Okay.
So, but she didn't know that he was a drug dealer. And then she found out.
So how does that happen? Like, so you're in the FBI, correct?
I was, yeah.
Okay, you was in the FBI. How long did it take you to be an FBI agent?
So the process is simple. You apply, then you go through the hiring process.
Do you have to be a cop first?
No, you have to be 23 years old to be a Fed, any Fed. Mm. And you also have to have a bachelor's degree. Most Fed positions, you have to have a bachelor's degree. So I had to go to college first, get my bachelor's degree before I applied. So you have to be 23 years old to apply for a federal position.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
But they will take prior military and prior law enforcement.
Okay.
But I was so young, I was like straight out of college.
Do the cops, the police officers, or the military, do they have an advantage over regular people, or does it matter?
I think Feds do, because Feds we're trained at a whole different level than law enforcement. So like cops, Feds, not only do we have to pass a lot of psychological tests, but also we have to pass like strenuous physical tests. And then we also have to stay in shape every year. So cops, like you say, the cop has to be in shape when he goes in. But then after a year, you see them, they're fat and they can't even run. But not for Feds. For Feds, you have to stay in shape and you have to know how to shoot and everything. You get tested every year. So we definitely have an advantage.
How many miles do you have to run?
It's not that much. I think it's like 2.1. It's not that much, yeah.
So how often y'all get tested? Like
every year. Every year.
So just once, so you're gonna know when you're gonna get tested, so you can.
Yeah, everybody knows. And it's push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups. I think it's I don't want to say it's 50 meter. 50 meters. 50 meters. Run and then a 2.1 mile.
Okay. Y'all get drug tested a lot?
Yeah, randomly, for sure. Okay. All the time.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Have you went undercover before?
Yeah, I was undercover for 2 years.
How does that work? Like you watch the movies and then they got they got to test the, the.
It's nothing like the
It's
movies.
nothing like the movies.
No. So like, I always talk about this and Angelina Jolie, she looks great. Her hair is perfect. She's sliding down the side of the building. No, you look like shit. You're shitting in buckets and you're driving broke down cars. There's no 007 driving Lambos. We don't do that. Like that is not true. It's not true because as an undercover agent, you need to mesh into your environment. You driving a Lambo is not meshing into the environment. So
is there do you have to date a certain guy to kind of get into that lifestyle, or does that matter?
No, not at all. I mean, you have to pay your dues like everybody, right? So I wanted to be a profiler, so I had to pay my dues. So when I went into the feds, they said I wanted to be a profiler. So everybody in the feds wants to be a profiler. You watch Criminal Minds and all that stuff, but that's a very highly sought off position. So I said, well, what's the fastest way for me to get there? And they said, well, you have to do undercover, because when you do undercover, it puts you into another league. You get what I'm saying? So it's like nobody wants to do undercover because most of the time you won't survive it. So I was like, well, let me do it because I want to go up the ladder quicker. So I did it and survived. Thank God.
Okay. So you were in there for 2 years.
I did undercover for 2 years. Then I became a profiler. So I've been profiling and doing interrogations for 18 years. Long time.
Being a single mom through that process, how does that work?
So when I started, I wasn't a single mom.
Oh, okay.
After my divorce, obviously I was. But after my divorce and now that I had my kids, I was doing more interrogations for the cartel through a different agency because I was blacklisted from me publishing my book. So I'm on the blacklist for Department of Defense.
So what does that mean?
I can never work for Department of Defense ever again, and I'm on the blacklist. Like, don't ever hire her, don't ever work for her. But what people don't realize is that when you're blacklisted, you're only blacklisted from a specific agency. You're not blacklisted completely from the government, because I still work.
So you could still get like a cop job or something like that?
Yeah, I can get a cop job, yeah. But I still work for the feds.
But you can't be so you still...
Yeah.
So how so what was you blacklisted from?
Department of Defense.
Oh.
So there's 220 agencies in the government. Again, we go back to the TV show, right? Like Homeland. If you're blacklisted, it means that you can no longer work for a specific agency, but the media will make you think that you're blacklisted completely from the government. But if I pissed off Department of Defense does not oversee Department of Human Justice, Department of Justice, or Department of Homeland Security. They don't oversee that. They're separate entities.
Okay.
It's like the FBI works separate from DEA, from CIA, from AFA. They all work separate. They never work together. They don't even like each other.
If you could change anything during that period of your life, like the FBI and in the cartel, would you change anything, or you leave everything the same?
I wouldn't. I get asked this a lot. And because I have my children, I cannot imagine my life without my children. So if I didn't marry into the cartel, I wouldn't have my kids.
Also, so your husband is in the cartel?
My
ex-husband.
My ex-husband.
Is he still in the cartel?
I mean, I don't know. we can call a friend.
Okay.
But I was married for 10 years to him and we had 2 children. So yeah.
So say somebody's giving you like a hard time, and can you call your ex-husband right now, like
100%,
make him disappear?
Yes, 100%.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is some benefits of knowing people. Yeah. I'll say that much.
Okay. So you're dangerous.
Yeah, I would say so. But I wouldn't say I'm dangerous because of him. I say I'm dangerous because I was trained to kill from the feds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So double-edged sword.
So you're saying like you can handle it yourself?
Yeah, I could, but I didn't necessarily marry into the cartel willfully. Like, I didn't know he was part of the cartel. Oh, okay. Because what he was doing was not what everybody thinks cartel members do. He was not moving drugs. There wasn't kilos of cocaine in our walls. There wasn't $5 million on the floorboards. He was actually running a legitimate business, and he was working for the cartel. What a lot of people don't know about cartel activity is that the cartel has doctors, attorneys, accountants, pediatricians, nannies, all working for them. But because of the media and Netflix and the shows, everybody thinks that cartel members are just running drugs.
Can I ask you what he was doing?
I mean, he was running a legitimate business and he was working for the cartel. So he was more into the real estate of the cartel.
So he was laundering their money for him.
That's what, allegedly.
Allegedly. Okay, cool.
Allegedly.
That's cool.
Okay, but a lot of people don't realize that a cartel is like building a house. This is how cartel members explain it. It's like building a house, right? Because you're into house flipping, right? So like, you have your electrician, you have your carpenter, you have your roofer. Everybody plays a role. Not everybody is moving drugs. Everybody plays a role. So it's strategically and it's synced, strategically synced to all work collectively. So when people are like, how did you not see the kilos of drugs or the money? And I'm like, that wasn't his position. That wasn't his role. Just like Ozark, the guy from Ozark was the accountant for the cartel. Now, he didn't start money laundering or having money and drugs, in the walls of his establishments until later.
Okay.
So, but people are just so conditioned to believe that that's what cartel does. It's just move drugs.
What's the most accurate series, like Ozark, Power? Like, what's the most accurate series you've seen or movie you've seen that you're like, okay, this is...
I mean, I would say like Narcos. Narcos. That's probably closest to it, but Narcos is based on actual true documentary, right? Yeah, but everything else is crazy. Like Griselda and stuff, that's actually a true story. But even a lot of the stuff was it's always exacerbated.
Yeah, a lot. I saw all her documentaries. Like, it was fabricated a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is. Yeah. I'm sure mine will be too.
Have you seen Cocaine Cowboys?
Yeah.
You seen part 1 and part 2?
Yeah.
Okay. They kind of, the end wasn't really...
Yeah, they go in and out. They go in and out on what's factual and what's not. Obviously for the viewing pleasure of the viewers, right? So that's why they always say based on true events. Some of it is true, some of it is not.
So your series is going to be completely accurate. They're not going to...
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm sure they're going to elaborate on some stuff, like I said, because some stuff is more appealing than other stuff. I'm sure that they will, for sure. I think everybody does,
Okay.
But yeah, but it's gonna be a hitter because it's actually a true story.
Okay, that's cool. What series is gonna be on? I mean,
we don't know yet. That's still like up in contractual things. But for the movie's supposed to be an actual featured film. So you could
it's gonna be a movie, not a series.
It's gonna be both a movie and a series.
Okay.
So the movie's gonna be kind of like the showstopper, the featured film, and then the series is gonna piggyback off of the movie because I do have book 2 coming out. So book 2 is called The Power of Forgiveness, and it's the continuation of me going under federal investigation.
Okay.
Because book 1 ends with my ex telling me he's part of the cartel, and then book 2 starts with me going under federal investigation.
Well, when you spoke to 50 Cent, what did he have to say about what you had going on?
I think that 50 Cent has been around a lot of these type of stories. He has the Flores twins under his contract. So I think 50 Cent likes a lot of these stories. A lot of his stories that he portrays are obviously about, drug dealing and all this stuff. And obviously he grew up in that environment as well. So I think the allurement is there. And then also the untold story between the Flores twins and I. We actually grew up in the same neighborhood in Chicago. We grew up in the same neighborhood. We ran around the same circles. And they grew up in the cartel. I went and joined the feds. So it's a crazy story because they grew up in the cartel. They went and did what they did with the cartel. I went and did what I did with the government. And so now we're actually partnering up to go on an international speaking tour to give the perspective of what it was like to be in the cartel and what it was like to be chasing the cartel. So crazy, right?
Yeah. Can you tell the days you're going to be on tour?
So contractually, we haven't gotten the dates correctly, but we're looking to start in Australia, 2 shows in Australia, then moving to Dubai and London. And then we're working on all that. But it's crazy because you never realize how connected you are with people until you realize like how much in common you have with people. Like, I actually have more in common with Jay Flores than an actual Fed. Because we grew up in the same hood. We grew up in the same hood with the same circumstances. We went to the same schools. We had the same friends. So even though I went and became a Fed and he grew up in the cartel, we actually had more in common. I had more in common with the cartel than I did with actual other federal agents, just because of where I grew up.
That's cool. So how did you grow up? Like how? So you grew up in Chicago, right?
I grew up in Chicago. I grew up in Cicero. Cicero is mostly like the Mexican hood, and it's immigrant families. And I went to Warren East. Warren East at the time had the highest pregnancy rate in the country. I mean, girls were getting pregnant left and right. And a lot of it is, absent parents, low income, immigrant parents that had to work and their kids were unsupervised. So gang activity through the roof. We had everything. We had any freaking gang that you can think of was there. And then like you had to watch out what you were wearing. You couldn't wear red and black. You couldn't wear yellow and black. You couldn't wear, anything yellow and black because it was all gang activity. So lots of gang violence, lots of shootings, all of that.
Okay.
This is a rough neighborhood.
How your brothers and sisters, how did they pan out?
They did well. I always say this. My sister's an executive for a big oil and gas company. My brother was the executive for Ford. So my parents literally put all three of us through college on like a factory worker salary. They hustled. So, yeah.
How your parents feel about your success?
My parents, I think they're very proud of us. At first, my mom, I remember when I told my mom I was going to become a Fed, she cried because she wanted me to be a doctor. But my dad was like, yeah, that's my girl, because my dad was always like, yeah, my dad is the one who taught me how to shoot guns. So when I was young. So yeah, so it made my dad very proud. My mom was like, girls are not supposed to be running around with guns, the traditional Mexican family, she's supposed to be sitting behind a desk doing therapy or something. So
where your parents originally from?
Guadalajara. Mexico.
Okay.
And they came here long time ago. I think my dad came here when he was 16. So yeah, 16, left home, came to work in the US, met my mom in Chicago. I think my dad was like 21. My mom was like 20. Yeah. Fell in love, got married. Yeah.
How was your upbringing like?
My upbringing, so even though we were living in a pretty rough neighborhood, I said it was good. I always go back to the family values, right? How we were raised. My parents always instilled in us like hardworking and having integrity. I remember my dad was working in a factory and he cut his fingers off. He got his hands stuck in a machine. And I remember, I'll never forget this. My dad came home one day and he said, you got two choices. You either go work at a factory and this happens to you, or you go and get an education and go to college. And all three of us, it was like embedded in our mind that we needed to get education to get ahead. It was literally embedded in our souls that that's what we needed to do if we didn't want to end up like our parents. And so that's what we did. We all went to college. We all have masters. We all excelled in education. Even though we went to one of the roughest, toughest schools in the city, we just stayed on track and all went to college. And it was almost like we didn't want to disappoint our parents because we saw how hard they work. Like I saw my mom working 3 jobs. So, and my dad was a truck driver. After he cut his fingers off, he became a truck driver. So he was gone, driving trucks. So we would see him like every, 2 weeks or 1 week because he was out. But we saw our mom working 3 jobs. Like my mom was selling Mary Kay. She was working at the factory and she was cooking food for like parties. So we had like a small catering business growing up.
So you got the hustle mindset from your mom?
Yes, we could, exactly. Okay. The having several streams of income came from watching my mom. She would have parties. She would have Mary Kay parties. So we would have all these ladies coming in, getting makeup put on them. And then she would cook food for like quinceañeras and like parties and weddings. And we were part of it. My mom was like, get up and start cutting onions. And we're like, okay. So yeah. And then she would work her regular job from Monday to Friday. So she really was hustling.
So speaking of streams of income, how many streams of income you got?
I have 11.
11?
11.
Okay.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Yeah.
But I would say, to your question, the one that, you know, I always like, people always ask me, which is the one that you have to put least energy and makes the most? I'm going to say digital products. Because digital products and digital marketing, you make money while you're asleep.
Okay.
Like, I don't actually have to show up. Whereas my speaking engagements, I charge $20,000 to get on stage.
Okay.
So I actually physically have to fly there. I have to physically be present, and I have to have hair, makeup, and be there, right? Whereas digital products, I can sell guides, I can sell my courses, I can sell my book in my sleep, and that all that money is going straight to my bank account.
Would you, if I had an event, you would charge me $20,000 too?
No, I wouldn't.
I was like, damn, that's
We cool.
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And I tell this to people and people that are getting into the speaking world, you have to work yourself up to that money. When I first started, I wasn't charging anything. But then as you progress in your career and you become more valuable and have more credibility, then that's when the zeros start adding up, you know? Like being on, so I got on Forbes 2023. And then I got on Forbes again 2024. But the second time I got on Forbes, I was in the same article with Alex Hermasi. So now we're leveling up, right? And then last month I just made the cover of CEO Dubai. So it's almost like with experience comes elevation. With elevation comes a price tag that goes up. And I think that's what people have to realize is that you have to solidify yourself in your specific market to be able to charge for your value. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So, so you're an FBI agent, correct?
I was.
You was. You find out you're in the cartel. So what happens after that? Like when do you get like the aha moment? Like let me start a book. Let me start public speaking.
Yeah. So
what
all
does
of
that
that,
come about?
I like to turn it around and say all of that happened for my destruction. So I was actually, so he knew I worked for the feds. He knew when we got married. He still married me. I didn't know, obviously, because I wouldn't have married him. During COVID, I was approached by a publishing company, Hasmark Publishing Company. They're out in Ontario, Canada. They approached me to write the story of my life because they had seen me on a prior podcast. So they approached me, and I always wanted to write a book, but I always feared that if I told my truth, that there was some consequences that came with that. Well, I decided to write my book. My ex read my transcript of the book before I even went to publishing, and he got triggered by all the trauma that I had gone through as a child and gone through as an undercover agent, that it triggered him to tell me his truth, which was that he grew up in the cartel and his family had been part of the cartel. So at that moment, I wanted to kill him. I actually had my gun on me and I went like this. I was going to kill him. I literally thought about it and I said, I'm going to kill him and I'm going to have the government cover it up. Because at this point, it became about my safety and my kids' safety. And this man just lied to me for 10 years. Like our entire marriage was a fraud. But then I stopped myself and I told myself, do what you do best and interrogate him. So I let go of my gun and I said, tell me more. And for the next 2 hours, he told me everything. And in that moment, I understood him and I understood his pain because I grew up in the hood. So like seeing drug dealings and seeing criminal activity, gang activity, that was a norm for me. So seeing lots of money and drugs for him was also the norm for him because he grew up in the cartel. So I was able to understand where he was coming from. He grew up in the cartel. He never had a choice because his dad was involved in the cartel when he was a child. So I felt, and I always say this, I felt that in that moment, that was the first time that he was the most authentic and truthful to me in the entire 10 years that we were together because he was telling me the truth.
What was like the final straw? Was that the final straw?
That was the final straw. Yeah, that's why I filed for divorce. I had to.
Were y'all on rocky terms, or when you
we had been because once COVID hit, all the insecurities and all the problems in your relationship just surfaced to the top because we were forced to be confined and be in the same environment with one another.
What was he doing that you didn't like?
That's a great question. I think we kind of had checked out a lot. There was a lot of double standards in our marriage.
This is the 9 year or this is the 10 year?
This is a 10-year.
Okay.
Yeah, this was 10-year.
Okay.
So there was a lot of things that were going on in our marriage, like the double standard stuff, like you can do this or I can do this, you can't do that. So like, you know, this over time, you start resenting each other because it just starts piling up and piling up. So when COVID hit, it just 10x'd because we were now dealt with being in each other's face the whole day with the kids, you know? So I think there was a lot of double standards. There was a lot of, I can do this, but you can't. Like he would go on guys trips. I couldn't go on, I couldn't even go to brunch with my girls. Like it wasn't allowed. So there was a lot of controlling going on. But as a mother, I was having kids and I obviously wanted to stay in the marriage for the kids.
Well, he was Mexican too, or what was he?
He was Cuban.
He was Cuban? He was like a black Latino, or he was just...
No, he was a light one.
Light one?
Yeah, he wasn't even the right shade. Right.
Okay, that's cool. So y'all was already on rocky terms.
We were. And we were in therapy too.
Oh, y'all was already on therapy?
We were in therapy. And I remember he was like, I'm going to pick the therapist. Because he said that I was always picking these like, you know, black women hear me roar. So I was like, all right, well, pick the therapist. He picked the whitest therapist that money can buy. And because he's like, I don't want you to get a woman. She's going to side with you. So I was like, okay, well, then pick a dude. So he picked like the whitest guy. And even the guy was like, you're hiding something. You're not telling her the whole truth. He told him. He said that. Wow. Yeah. So even the therapist saying that put more pressure on him. And then I started working at the DEA wire room here in Houston. And then that even brought more pressure, right? So all of that went down.
Why did y'all decide to move to Houston? Or y'all always been in Houston?
He was in Houston. I was transferred to Houston to do human trafficking in 2008. So we met here, but I'm originally from Chicago and I got transferred down here in 2008. Yeah.
Okay.
And I met him here.
Okay.
I met him on a dating app.
Oh, you met on what app?
Match.
Match?
Shout out to Match.
Match.com?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that was the last straw. How long did it take for y'all to divorce?
I had one of the fastest divorces in Texas history. So I found out the whole situation in February. I was divorced by July.
By July? That's not bad. So like 6 months?
Yeah, it was quick. Usually divorces.
And he signed and he was cool.
He signed, but there's a small caveat that people don't know about. I had him sign some paperwork. I didn't take anything. He even kept the house. We were living in this like...
You let him keep the house?
I let him keep the house, but I'm going to tell you why. I let him keep everything. The house, the money, everything. And I just left with the babies. But I was not dumb. I had him sign an authorization, giving me authorization to write his part of the story in my book. So he's like, yeah, your little book is a piece of shit. So yeah, that little book hit.
So you was like Tina Turner, like she just wanted her to keep her last name, like the Tina Turner? Because I was like, yeah. So you was like that. Yeah.
So I left and book hit bestseller. And then I sold the book to Hollywood. And in that contract, he can't take any of it.
How much you sold it for?
I mean, we can't say that, but it was 7 figures. So
7 figures?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah. So that was the fastest 7 figures I ever made.
If he knew, if he had an inclination that you were gonna make that much off the book, do you think he would have still did that?
Oh yeah, he still says it. He makes jokes about it. He's like, "Where's my cut?" I mean, because obviously the movie hasn't came out yet, and the project is not completely finished. But he always makes jokes about it. He's like, "Where's my cut?" And I'm like, "You signed paperwork. You shouldn't have signed the paperwork." But that was the exchange. I wasn't gonna take the house. I wasn't gonna take the money. Nothing. I literally left with the kids. That's it. The kids' toys, the furniture, everything was left behind.
That's all that matters is the kids.
And I left. So, you know, I don't think he knew that the book was going to hit. I don't believe he thought it was going to hit, or he thought that the story was even worth anything. So,
okay.
You know, silver lining.
So they buy the book. How long does it take when you start like doing your speaking engagements and then your affiliated marketing?
Yeah. So I published the book November of 21. It hit bestseller right away. November of 21 hit bestseller. It took about a year. So I signed the deal with Hollywood August of 23. No, August of 22. August of 22. So it took about a year. And then from that deal, I got invited to be on one of the biggest stages in the world. So Natasha Graciano put me on her stage. I literally DM'd her. Literally. I just DM'd her one day, thought maybe somebody will see it. Maybe not. Maybe it'll get stuck in that folder that nobody sees. And she responded. I literally asked her if I can be put on her stage. And I guess she did her due diligence because she looked me up. She saw my story. I think this was on a Tuesday. And on Thursday, I was on her stage. She was like, be here in LA. And next thing you know, I was on her stage. And from her stage, that's when I blew up as a speaker because I was given the platform to share my story. And she's considered one of the best motivational speakers in the world. So she gave me a chance. And from that chance, I was able to catapult my speaking career. So she put me on her platform, and then everybody knew who I was. And then Forbes came knocking. So I ended up on Forbes because of that speech.
Okay. What do people need to come out with a bestseller, like with a book?
So what people don't realize about a best-selling book is it's all marketing play. Mm-hmm. Anybody can write a book, but if nobody knows you have a book and you don't have a marketing strategy, nobody's going to buy your book. It could be a book that's not even that good, but if you have the marketing that you need and it gets out there to the masses and people buy it, you become a bestseller. Mm-hmm. Because to be a bestseller, you have to sell 10,000 copies the first week that is published. That's either for a New York Best Time Seller, Wall Street Journal, or International Bestseller. Everybody has to sell 10,000 copies the first week that you publish. That's a lot of copies. Mm-hmm. But nobody knows that you're selling a product if you don't tell them.
Did you go on tour?
I went on tour. Yeah, I went on tour with the book. But the bigger story is I spent, and this is like from my accountant, I spent $58,000 going to red carpets, going to events, hair, makeup, flights for an entire year to get in front of people so that I can sell my story to Hollywood. Like people think that it just happened overnight. Like I put in the work. Like I was out there at Grammys, at Latin Grammys, at the Oscars, at the events, at the movie premieres, getting in front of the people, the decision makers. Mm-hmm. And building relationships and nurturing those relationships.
When was your aha moment that you realized you made it?
When I got signed for the movie. I will never forget. Like we went out, we were on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. We went out, we were popping bottles. They were all going crazy, bottles everywhere, the champagne in the air. And I remember sitting there like, dang, this really is happening. Because things like this don't happen to people like us. And I remember my mom saying the same exact thing. When I made it to Forbes, my mom was kind of like, she couldn't understand how I made it to Forbes until I showed her how I got there. And I remember I pulled out the Forbes with like Sofia Vergara. I'm like, Mom, do you see her? Like this is the same magazine. And she was like, oh, right. So then now, that was back in 2023. Mm-hmm. So then I made it again in 2024. And then last month I made the cover of CEO Dubai. And then my mom was, because when you get a cover, you really made it. Mm-hmm. So then that's when my mom was like, wow, you're on a cover, on an international cover from Dubai. And being on a Dubai cover means you've made it because Dubai is a country of wealth. So, yeah, you should have seen her face. She was like, wow.
Yeah, I like Dubai. You been there?
I haven't. Can you believe it? I'm on their magazine and I haven't, but I will be. I'm supposed to be there this fall.
Okay.
So, with Jay Flores.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Where you see yourself in 5 years?
I see myself continuing to write books. I really enjoy writing books, and I feel like my story is like a movie. It's like it always continues to flow that way.
Sound like it.
Right? And then obviously still continuing my digital marketing, providing value to people, showing people how to monetize their Instagram, how to monetize really everything, their expertise, but also speaking. 2025, we're taking speaking to a whole nother level. Like we're going to be in Dubai, we're going to be in London and Australia. We're really taking it to the international market. So really the speaking is there for me. And then of course, just continuing to raise my kids into, good human beings. So.
Would you be, I guess this, would you be mad if your kids didn't want to be an entrepreneur like you, like they wanted like a 9 to 5?
No, not at all. Not at all. I even told my kids if they didn't want to go to college, that's fine with me. but we're going to have to find something. Like you have to, it's all about your passion. Like, what are you passionate about? What is your vision and your mission? I instill those words into my children because I want them to see beyond the box. You know, you don't have to go to college. You know, my parents didn't go to college and they're doing well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all three of us went to college, but I'm an entrepreneur. I don't even use my degree anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my sister, my brother doesn't either.
You feel like your degree was a waste of time?
Yes, absolutely. Both of them. I have a master's too.
You wouldn't have got your FBI job though.
You're right, but I'm not even doing that anymore.
Do you feel like...
And I'm making more money now than I was when I was a Fed.
Of course.
Right.
But would you...
But I wouldn't have gotten there.
Yeah, I was like I don't...
Yeah.
You think you would have... You think you would still went down the same trajectory?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
If you... Okay, so if you didn't get your degree, where do you think you would have been?
I don't know.
You think you still would have met your husband and all that or no?
No, God, no. Because I would have had to... So the Feds moved me down here.
Mm-hmm.
So if I never went into the Feds, I would have never been in Houston. I never wanted to be here. The only reason why I ended up here is because my parents moved down here when I was still in college at U of I. And I remember they said, you can either go to Miami, Los Angeles, Arizona, or Houston, because that's a Spanish-speaking communities.
Why you go to Miami?
I know. I should have. Listen, all this cartel stuff would have been out the door. But I came to Houston because my parents were here. So I said, well, damn, if I got to move somewhere, let me go where my parents are.
Oh, so you Houston moved... I mean, your parents moved from Chicago to Houston.
Yeah.
And you was like, well, I got my family.
Yeah, so when it was presented to me what city I wanted to go to, because when you become a Fed, you can't stay in the city you were born.
How come?
Because you got too much connections.
Oh.
So they move you somewhere else. They actually move you every like 3-4 years.
That's mandatory?
That's mandatory, yeah. Now you can come back to your state, but before you've been gone for like 3-4 years.
Okay.
So when they said, well, where you want to go? I said, well, shit, send me to Houston, because at least at Houston I have my parents. So that's how I ended up down here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you said, so in 5 years, what'd you say you was gonna be?
Definitely like writing more books, hitting more stages, and really just helping people. Like my vision and mission is to help inspire people that have gone through trauma and how to monetize from that trauma, or how to build yourself up, you know, in every aspect of business, you know?
Okay. Is there like a trajectory, like with your speaking engagements, like you plan on hitting, like you want to get paid like 50,000 or something like that?
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, anything over 100 would be great. You know, like we're looking at like Tony Robbins' money. You know, I think he's like 250 or more.
250?
Yeah. I mean, the potential in the speaking world is insane, because speaking, you always need speakers, right? And especially women, brown-skinned women like me, you barely see any Hispanic women out there. It's a male-dominant world. So, I mean, the possibilities are endless. And nobody else has my story.
If you had to choose one, just only doing one thing, like books or speaking or the media, what would you choose?
Based on money or based on just like preference?
Whatever you want. It could be money, it could be love, it could be passion, like whatever.
I would choose the podcast.
So your personal podcast.
My personal podcast, I would choose that over anything, and I'll tell you why. You are able to reach more people through podcasts than through speaking. Because when I'm speaking, I'm only at one event with a specific number of people. When you're on a podcast, everybody in the world can listen to you based off of your social media. So I feel like podcast is really like the unspoken new hustle, because you literally can be watched by billions of people because it's there. You know, people can tap in at any time, whether it's night here, morning there. Your podcast is the fastest way to get the word out and to get everything out there into media.
What's your top 5 guests you would want like on your podcast?
Oh my God. This is a good one. So obviously I'm going to say Jay Shetty. I'm a big Jay Shetty fan. I would say Tony Robbins. I like Tony Robbins. Michelle Obama.
Michelle Obama?
I love Michelle Obama and Obama. I actually met them both.
So
You know, I would actually do Kamala. I'm down for
Kamala
Kamala.
Harris?
Yeah, yeah,
So that's 4. That's Tony Robbins,
yeah.
Obama's.
And then I would go old school and say Martin Luther King.
MLK?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because I feel like he had a lot of unspoken words because his life was cut short. So, and I mean, I have a long list, but yeah.
Okay.
But podcasts, I feel like podcasts is making more millionaires faster than anything else. You know, speaking your mind, for sure.
So you're going to move out of Houston soon?
I would like to. But I have my kids here, you know, and their dad is still here. So for those that were wondering, he's still around.
So it's just easier to live in Houston.
It's easier to live in Houston because I want my kids to grow up with their dad, but
And their grandparents.
And their grandparents, because my parents ain't going nowhere. But yeah, and it for sure, right? But I would definitely like to move where there's a little bit more nicer water. So whether it be Mexico or Bali or Thailand, or I'm not opposed to an actual country. So
okay,
yeah.
Is there anything else? Oh, how much you said your book? How much does your book do in total?
Oh my God! In total, I don't know the numbers, but the first week alone, it did over 100.
100,000.
Yeah, over 100. Yeah, if you do the math, 10,000 copies in 1 week. Yeah, if you do the math.
Okay.
But yeah. But I wouldn't say like, because I know you like asking people the biggest deals. Obviously, my biggest deal today is a movie deal, 7 figures. And then, and then comes the sponsorships and then the money I've made through digital marketing, which has been like about 90K.
What's the most you made in a month?
In a month, I would say the 7-figure deal.
7 figures?
Yeah.
So that just happened in a month?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
So I would say that's probably the biggest deal was the movie deal. And then digital marketing, I made about 90K in 3 months. Yeah, like 3 months. All on digital products.
What's your biggest purchase you've made?
My biggest purchase, other than my house, I would say my house.
It could be your house.
But what I'll say is I would say my investment to my life, right? So like when you invest in yourself, the returns are insane. So I invested in publishing my book and it got me the 7-figure deal. So the investment in yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're the one that got the deal. So, and a lot of people, and I say it that way because a lot of people are so reluctant to invest in their self, in mentoring, in workshops, in courses, you know, but knowledge is power, you know, and deals don't happen overnight. You got to hustle them. And a lot of people lack the hustle in them. You know, I think people want to spend $1 million, but they don't want to earn the $1 million. And there's a difference. Because I can give you $1 million and you can be like, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this. But if I tell you, make the $1 million, knowledge is power. But it's easy to just blow $1 million. So, yeah.
Do you have a manager?
I do. I'm managed. Yeah,
okay.
I do.
Because I was like, it don't seem like you have a manager.
Because I keep it all behind closed doors. Okay. But I have a manager, yeah.
So you got a team behind you?
I do have a team behind me. And actually...
You have an assistant?
Yeah. And then my manager is a producer. And he actually was a producer on The Cell. He actually used to produce Jennifer Lopez. So I'm managed by Julio Caro. So shout out to Mr. Caro. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my manager. Who happens to be Jay Flores' manager as well. So.
Is there anything you got coming up that you want to promote? Yeah,
so whoever's in Houston on Sunday, August 25th, we're having a live show here in Houston. All the details are on my Instagram at the Angelica Robles. All of the details are on there. Also my website, it's www.angelicaroblesofficial. It's easy to find me, but we have that event on Sunday, August 25th coming up. There's tickets being sold right now. I'm hosting a live webinar this Wednesday on teaching people how to make money off their phone. So content creation, sponsorships, user-generated content. You know, every time I post a reel on Instagram, I made $350.
$350 every time?
Yeah, every time. And that's just by sponsorships and what I'm selling. Every time I post on Instagram, I'm always selling. Even though it seems like I'm just posting a workout, I'm always selling. Whether it's a guide, a course, a product, I'm always selling. Mm-hmm. So I always tell people, you really want to get to the next level, you need to have digital products, guides, courses, that type of stuff, or a physical product. If you have a marketing campaign done correctly, you can sell bottle caps. So you can sell hats, you can sell shoes, t-shirts, whatever, or you can sell a guide on how you got into real estate.
Okay.
And that's a digital product, which means you can add to it, you can subtract it, you can make 3, 4, 5 of them, but it's a product that you have out in the world that people just buy, and you're making money in your sleep because it's all digitized. It's online.
How much you make a month on Instagram?
On Instagram, the most I've made on Instagram, I would say has been like about 30K.
30K?
On Instagram.
That's in 1 month.
That's in 1 month. But if you take into consideration the partnerships, so I made about 50,000 just from being on one podcast. And that's
Whose podcast was that?
So I was on James English podcast. He's out in London. I was on his podcast, and that generated me $50,000 in sales the day it aired, because he's such a widespread podcaster that everybody that watched him went and bought my book and my Audible. And I'll never forget, because I saw the sales coming in through Amazon, and I'm like, dang. So I would say in one day, that was probably the fastest, other than the movie deal, was from the exposure of a high profile podcast. Everybody then went back and bought my book. And that's the beauty of partnership and of being on people's platforms. When you get on a platform, it will help you get to the next level. So, I mean, that was just from my book and Audible sales.
Do you regret anything the last 5 years since you took off?
I don't regret anything, even marrying my husband, because if I regretted that, I wouldn't have my children, and my children are my most prized possession. I'm nothing without my children. I always say my children are the bosses. They run shit, not me. They do, because everything I do is for them. And if I didn't marry my ex, and then I didn't marry all the situational, circumstantial things, I wouldn't be here. Okay. I literally wouldn't be here. So I wouldn't regret anything, because if you regret things, you're regretting your journey. So you can't regret your journey, because it's substantial to your own creation and who you are as an individual. So never have any regrets.
Is there any up and coming partnerships you wanna announce, or you can't announce them yet?
Yeah, let's announce it. We've already got into that. So Jay Flores and I, for those that don't know who Jay Flores is, him and his brother were number 4 in the cartel hierarchy. If you guys know the story, Jay and Peter wore wires and were the ones that got Chapo indicted. And they went to prison. They spent 12 years in prison. 50 Cent signed them on. They have a really good podcast out. It's got 8 million downloads. It's called Surviving El Chapo. And Jay and I have partnered up together, and we're going on an international speaking tour to talk about what it was like for him moving $168 billion worth of cocaine. Him and his brother were in charge of that. And then me spending 18 years trying to catch them. So now we're partnering up to talk about how we ended up being collaborators.
They don't have any resentment towards you?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Because the feds were the ones who gave them a second chance. Even though they're looked at as snitches, if you really look at it, if you were placed in that situation, you'd probably do the same thing. His wife is in prison right now for hiding $5 million under the floorboards. So the wife is in prison right now.
And they're free.
And they're free, but after they put their 12 years in. Let's make that really clear, because a lot of the U.S. market, they're snitches. But anybody on this earth would probably want to have access to $168 billion. Let's not cap. Let's keep it real, right?
It's a lot of money.
But people make decisions based on their livelihood. They could have been dead too. They could have been in jail for life. So people make decisions, whether you agree with them or not. Now, Jay goes around and he does conferences all around the world. In fact, today, he's in New York City talking to 1,200 agents. So he changed his life around, and now he's teaching the government and law enforcement how to break down the cartel. So this is his second life. That's what he's doing now. And a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, he's a snitch. And I'm like, he's got 1,200 audience members listening to what he has to say. Because at the end of the day, he's an expert in cartel activity and monetization with drugs, and he was running this shit. So
the series that they're gonna have that's 50 Cent bought out, are you gonna be in that series?
no, I would like to, but I don't think I will be, because I wasn't involved in the actual dealings with them. But I will never forget, when Chapo got caught the last time, I was in the DEA elevator with the DEA director, and his phone rang, and he said they got Chapo. And I was like, but I already knew that they were wearing wires. So that's why our tour is called The Untold Story, because there's a lot of things that people don't realize, that even though I was a Fed, I was still connected to the cartel because I was trying to catch them, but also because I married into it. So it's like I was always meant to be part of the cartel. It's crazy. Like, it's crazy sounding. But now Jay and I are really taking on these roles that we have and really teaching people what we've learned about being a Fed and he is a world-renowned drug dealer. Like, yeah, it's crazy.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's good. So is there anything else you want to talk about?
That's it. People need to learn different hustles. I think a lot of people are stuck in the 9-to-5 hustle. And again, knowledge is power. Like, if you don't know that you can make money from your Instagram, I feel like people waste away, literally, brain cells being on Instagram, scrolling, and not making money.
Are you on TikTok too?
I'm on TikTok too. That's where we hit 2.9 million.
Okay. You on Twitter too?
I'm not on Twitter. I'm literally on Snapchat. I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. But most of my activity is through TikTok and Instagram.
Okay.
So yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I just want to thank you for coming out on my podcast, telling me your story. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.